What is up, guys? Right now, we're going to talk about Twitch. As I announced on a YouTube community post today, I woke up this morning discovering that I had been banned from Twitch. This, combined with the 2 years of contact with Twitch that I'm about to show you, has made me think that there might be a little targeting and maybe even a little stealing going on at Twitch. And, you know, the parent company, Amazon, with wage theft, it's not really a secret that there have been issues with that in the company. So I'm going to take you through. This is going to be a little bit of a different video. You hear me out on this. It sort of does tie into politics as well, but more on that in a second. So here on the screen, you're going to see the original ban notice. And the ban, the reason for the ban, they say, encouraging or glorifying extreme violence, inciting others to commit or participate in violent acts that would cause death or extreme physical harm to a group of people or major destruction to property or public infrastructure, glorifying a tragedy, a violent event, or the parties responsible for it. And then it says examples of violative conduct include, but are not limited to, inciting others to burn down a police station, encouraging others to physically assault people at a protest, explicitly stating that a group of people should be killed. Okay, so there's the ban, right? It's pretty strong language. This had come immediately following a stream where all I talked about was Zoran Mamdani's win in New York City and a little rant about capitalism and, you know, some issues with capitalism and the benefits of socialism. I hadn't even covered any news that evening. Now, when I saw this, I went back and looked at the transcript and I was immediately sort of taken aback. And then I went digging because I do download all the transcripts and I use text-based editing in Premiere. So I have transcripts of like every stream, right? Especially the recent ones. So there was something that happened on June 24th, which was a couple days before this, that I thought, maybe this is the instance. So I did go back there and I'm going to play you the entirety of the clip. I'm going to give you a brief synopsis in a sec. But so now you may ask, why am I making this video with the ban? We're going to watch that clip and maybe even I deserve the ban. But the reason for this video is because something about this ban, it kind of hit me in the gut feeling sort of area, because I have actually had 2 years of interactions with Twitch that have been a little unusual, culminating in this ban, including me having a heated face-to-face discussion with the CEO of Twitch, Dan Clancy, about the political ad revenue just 2 weeks ago. And in the last 2 weeks, I have had 2 instances of unprovoked conduct by Twitch. First off, them auditing my emotes and removing a bunch, and now this ban, okay, which came a couple of days after the content. So this, combined with the 2 years of contact with Twitch that I'm about to show you, has made me think that there might be a little targeting and maybe even a little stealing going on at Twitch. And, you know, the parent company, Amazon, with wage theft, it's not really a secret that there have been issues with that in the company. So I'm going to take you through with everything that got us to this ban. I'm going to show you that clip in its entirety and discuss it. And then we're going to leave it at that. And maybe this video gets out there. And if other people have had situations with Twitch, maybe they'll come forward. Maybe this is all nothing. But nonetheless, because of that feeling I had this morning and how it sort of tied in the last couple of years, I felt like I really am compelled to make this video. So that being said, let's get into it. Okay. Now, I've got to give you a little bit of my history with Twitch. In 2019, I started streaming on a PS4 in my living room, streaming Fortnite. And then I was an early adopter of TikTok. My TikTok blew up shortly after the pandemic in 2020. And then by 2021, in just 2 years, I was like a rocket. I was averaging 2,000 viewers on Twitch. I was making well over 10K a month and getting sponsorships and the whole 9 yards. Now, shortly after that, one of the perks that came with that was a Twitch rep. So I had a personal contact inside the building, which is above and beyond like partner support. So they're there to, you know, set you up with events at TwitchCon. They're there to, if you get banned, to help you out, et cetera, ask any questions, you know, and you have an inside guy that can help you with situations with the platform. Now, I'm pretty low maintenance, so I did not have a lot of contact with my Twitch rep. All right. You know, here and there, but I didn't take up a lot of his time. All right. He's going to remain nameless for the time being too. I did cover up his name in the correspondence because, you know, because I don't want to pull him in direct involvement. Okay. Now, shortly after I went head to head with Andrew Tate, this was in the summer of 2022. It created quite a stir. There were like tens of millions of views of people attacking me on TikTok with these clips, calling me a pink-haired beta cuck and the usual things you'd expect from that gaming situation. I mean, some of this stuff was rabid. I was getting death threats. I was, you know, getting a lot of slur-filled hate mail. The comment sections on these videos on TikTok were nuts. Eventually, shortly after that, a couple months later, Andrew Tate got deplatformed. And then that sort of set me off on my journey of starting to transition from gaming to politics. Now, of course, I took a hit viewer-wise when I left gaming, and especially with the conflict with Andrew Tate. I lost a lot of the gaming viewers, especially the bros, kind of gamer bros. And, you know, there was definitely some conflict there. It was not the smoothest transition. There was a lot of hate directed at me for that change. But nonetheless, in 2023, I started transitioning to political content and just dabbling, doing more just chatting in addition to some gaming. I was kind of doing a mix. Now, one of the things that happened even before I switched off gaming in the end of 2022 was a cratering of ad revenue. Now, normally the ad revenue goes up in December. In January, it goes to nothing. That's pretty standard. But I am talking about an absolute cratering of ad revenue, where what ended up happening is Twitch was giving us a lot of money to run ads, and they wanted us to run a lot of ads, and they kept guaranteeing this money if you ran a certain amount of ads. But what ended up happening is every month that you did that, the money started getting less and less, and the amount of ads they wanted you to run got more and more. And then eventually it got to the point where the revenue, the amount of ads you were running, which was affecting your channel, the viewership of your channel, and the money was just cratering. And it was like noticeable. It was like a 7-month stretch that led up to this email. Okay. And this was March of 2023. And I'm talking about the last 7 months. So that means we're talking about September of 2022, the month after the Andrew Tate thing, up until March of 2023, where there was just a noticeable cratering ad revenue. So I wrote this message to my Twitch rep saying, "Yo, boss, how are you? Just wondering if I can get some insight as to what is going on with the platform at the moment. Because the last like 7 months have seen the income around here basically disappear. There was decent ad revenue last summer, and then each month they wanted more ads for less money, and now the ad money is basically gone. And with Kick coming on the scene, people are spending less and less. Does Twitch have any plans to do anything about this? Or are they actually just wanting us to move to Kick or YouTube? I'm definitely feeling pretty abandoned at the moment. Would love to have some insight." Now, the abandonment feeling was obviously, I had been invested in Twitch for years. When I was blown up, they were making a ton of money. Okay. And Twitch, it's not really a discovery platform. Like, you really blow up here when you're blowing up due to work on other platforms. So it's not like Twitch is out here like actively promoting you and helping you blow up, you know. So Twitch had sort of always been there, right? And I felt a connection, you know, during the 𝗵𝗡 days. I felt a real connection with Twitch, and it was always a bastion of a lot of free speech. They protected the rights of sex workers and people to be able to express whatever opinions they want. They were heavily protected of LGBTQ people, etc. Right? Now, mind you, this email in March of 2023, that was the month that Dan Clancy was officially announced as the CEO of Twitch. Now, those of you who have been involved in any type of business with a big shift like that know that usually if the CEO is announced in that month, that there have been behind the scenes workings and the transition has been, you know, in progress for a little while. But anyway, it had been a noticeable sort of like what felt like a shuck and jive there with Twitch of like every month they're demanding more and more ads. And then every month my ad revenue is just going down and down. And naturally my ad revenue was less than when my viewership was like 2,000 viewers. That wasn't the issue. This was more related to the ad revenue going down and down while holding a consistent number of viewers, where the revenue itself was totally like cratering. Okay. And that became sort of the crux of our discussions. I also had a little issue with transparency because knowing that Amazon had a lot of wage theft issues, I didn't like the fact that our dashboards didn't really tell us every month how many subs we had, how many bits we had, and what money was coming in and out. You just sort of get this monthly total, but there was no transparency to the situation. Now, in response to some of those discussions about ad revenue, the next thing that happened was the Twitch dinner. Dan Clancy was doing a small private dinner in May, right? I believe it was in May of 2023. And shortly before that, my Twitch rep sent me this message saying, any chance you're free tomorrow so I can go over it with you? It's a small group dinner with the CEO, Dan Clancy. And I'm like, oh, great. That would be great. So we talked about it. I got a spot at this dinner and I went with a collection of about, I don't know, 10 people or so, all Twitch partners, all that had been some level of success. And we had dinner and we talked about guest star and their new things and what have you. And then we went to have drinks afterwards. And I'm sober, but you know, everyone was drinking. I did hang out. And that was the first time that I approached Dan Clancy to talk to him about the ad revenue sort of cratering and about that transparency thing, that I was having some issues with the lack of transparency. And he had said nobody had expressed anything like that. And I'm like, really? The guys that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars on this platform aren't curious if all those numbers are adding up and looking at their subtotals and stuff. But it was fairly like, you know, it was uneventful. He was pleasant. He did get a little annoyed with me, like sort of pressuring him. I'm a little relentless and I'm just sort of, you know, giving him a grilling about some of this stuff. And he was pretty new to the company. Anyway, as you can see, obviously it was cordial. He did invite us all to his house. There was an event going on at his house. Obviously covered up some of this information because I'm not going to dox anybody. But it was on May 7th where he said, thanks for coming out to dinner. It's great meeting you. Would love to hear your experiences with guest star. We were talking a lot about that because I told him I was switching to politics. As I mentioned, if you're free, you're invited to come to dinner. So it was cordial. I obviously had his contact info, including the phone number. This is something I never abused, and I wasn't able to attend that evening, but it was like a cordial and you know, perfectly amenable relationship at that time. And as far as I could tell, no hard feelings about the grilling about transparency. Now, this is where the discussion sort of kicked into a little bit of a crazier gear. Because, like I said, I've been having discussions with my Twitch rep about the ad revenue cratering. And then I made a discovery just a couple months later, something financial happened. I kept some records of income, but then what I noticed in the month of July of 2023, that some of my numbers weren't adding up. What was in the Twitch dashboard was different than the numbers I had. Some numbers were different. So I went into my dashboard and I noticed this little thing on Tuesday, July 25th, okay, where you see the two dashes there. Looks like 205.93, but it's actually negative 205.93 because there was a negative $253 in gifted subs. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Okay. Now, the only reason I noticed this is because I had a low number of subs that month. If I had $1,000 of subs, what would have happened is it would have just shown $747 worth of subs. You see where I'm going with this? Where this was the first time I noticed that they were taking away money from my stream. And it was noticeable because it happened at a time when I was switching my content and my channel had sort of cratered out, which got me thinking, like, how many times did this happen in the past? How many times is it happening to Twitch streamers all over the map where they're just taking money away from their actual total? We don't know. But anyway, the minute I saw this, I went and emailed my Twitch rep, okay? Because I looked at the terms of service and the partner agreement, and it explicitly talked in the partner agreement in 2023. I don't know if it's still like that, but it explicitly talked about how part of Twitch taking half of your subs and the bits was protection of us. We were protected from the chargebacks, which means if somebody uses a bad credit card, if somebody does a chargeback on Twitch's end, they absorb that. That is part of the service they're offering for 50% of the cut and all the other income that they upcharge for the bits, right? So the whole service they're providing is to protect with that chargeback. So this was on August 7th, where I said, yeah, the date the subs were gifted was July 16th. It was 100 gifteds. The person also gifted Twitch bits. Now, they didn't take away my bits. They just took away the sub income. And I gave them the name. And then I said, then on July 26th, the name disappeared from the leaderboard. And the person was in my Discord saying they had been banned. Something about hate speech. Again, I don't know them, but I'm pretty certain they're from the US. After they donated a whole bunch, chat wanted me to play a few games with the person. I did. He was on the East Coast. Then about a week after that, I noticed on July 25th, Twitch had very discreetly charged me back on the subs and taken that money away. No email, no notice. They didn't say, hey, there was something compromised with your account. We just took the money, right? Now, I said, see that extra dash? When I first saw it in passing, I thought I had 205 income that day, but it was negative 205. Then I got to wonder how many other times this has happened. Because in the partner agreement, it says we can only be charged back for subs and bits if it has something to do with us, like if we defraud in some way. Okay. And this super discreet removal of income is like really shady. If they are charging back streamers for protected stuff, not sure what to make of it. Thanks, boss. And so we had several Discord call discussions about that, me and the rep. And he actually thanked me for not going public on Twitter with this and making a huge deal about it. And I don't know, it was weird. He just sort of said, oh, the person who made the charges charged it back. And I was like, but dude, the partner agreement says you guys absorb that. And he was going to look into it and nothing happened. I just never got that money back. But the fact that they only give you a total of your subs for the month with no count of how many subs and they don't show any accounting means on any given month, every streamer on Twitch could be having money being charged back or taken off their account despite the partner agreements, despite everything. And who knows what's going on with that. But anyway, that sort of didn't sit well with me. Okay, that event, that really bothered me. And that felt like a weird breach, especially after I had just talked to the CEO about transparency. And then I was like, man, something's going on here. So then, as I was slowly switching my content, I was still streaming gaming, and I was sort of like doing a hybrid, moving into new content. My viewership was low, but not like non-existent, but it was certainly a far cry, like way lower than when I was big. But anyway, I started doing some investigatory stuff, and this was right around the time that 𝗙cie𝗶𝗪 took a lot of flack for raising money with ads and tabbed viewers for the streamer awards. And what I started noticing was a fair number of channels, including some gaming ones, that were leaving their stream on for like hundreds of hours. And everybody was tabbing. They were tabbing at like hundreds of viewers and ostensibly running ads and collecting money overnight. Some of these streamers are not even at their house, not even in the building, just an empty stream running, tabbed with people who like them, like accepting the ads. There's nothing going on, no active chat. So I started collecting some data on this because I thought maybe this was connected to the cratering of the ad revenue. Because if advertisers were paying Twitch a whole bunch of money to service a bunch of ads and they weren't seeing any real interest from the ad, it could be driving ad rates down. Okay, if a bunch of streamers en masse are serving ads to non-existent people and these companies are paying for ads on Twitch, and whatever metric they're using to gauge whether the ad is working, if that metric is falling short, that is going to affect us all as a whole. So I did reach out to my Twitch rep about that, and I started showing him examples of people that were gaming the system like this. And then it culminated in this Discord message where, after showing him some examples of this is now in March of 2024, where he says, okay, so unless he's farming drops or anything like that, there really isn't anything being broken from a TOS perspective. However, since this seems to be a recurring trend, I put an inquiry in with the policy team to review it, so no action needed on your end. And I said, really? That's crazy. So we can just keep our streams running all day long and run ads on them? That is wild. Cool. Thanks, man. Now, this is still happening. This like running of streams when streamers are absent and they're not even in the building. As far as I know, it's been happening the entire time. I don't know what happened with that inquiry, but I was pretty bothered that that was okay. I mean, not just because of the effect it could have on cratering ad rates, but just to what feels like like a patent dishonesty of the company itself, if they're going to allow streamers to not even be making content, to not even be in the building where a stream is run, no rerun, just a blank screen, while they're serving ads to thousands of tabbed viewers that nobody's watching, and just, you know, hitting that cash register. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, that was rubbing me the wrong way. Now, after this whole thing in March of 2024, then I got this notification 2 months later in May of 2024 that said, oh, we're letting you know that starting in June 1st, you no longer have a Twitch rep. And I was like, huh, okay. Now, granted, in the early part of 2024, I had switched to full-on politics. So yeah, my viewership was pretty low, and I get it. You know, you're not a big wig anymore. I got the Twitch rep because I was a big wig. But the timing of this, after I had exposed ad impropriety, and then 2 months later, wham, my Twitch rep is gone. And that felt really strange. That felt really odd to me. And yet I was still like, you know, maybe it's a coincidence. Whatever. All right, moving on. I chalked it up, but it set off those little alarm bells in the gut, because now my inner contact was gone. Now this becomes important because of what happened next. Right around the election, some stuff had gone on related to the conflict in Gaza. Some of the bigger streamers, Hassan and Asmongold, there had been some, I don't know, fighting amongst them. I believe Asmongold made a particularly gnarly comment that caused some wreckage in, you know, some blowback in the Twitch community. Now, the next thing I got from Twitch that was crazy was this notice, okay? And this notice was on November 1st. On November 1st, I got a notice that said, you're being warned. And it says, some content does not violate our community guidelines, but it's not appropriate for all Twitch users. In order to help viewers make informed choices about the content they watch, we require streamers to use the appropriate content classification label. And in particular, there's one there about politics and sensitive social issues. Now, they sent me this warning saying, you know, we've moved you into this category and you're warned we found this in your content. Now, here's the problem. I didn't get notified about needing to select a content. And I don't go in there and look at the content labels unless I'm doing a sponsored stream. Okay, so I wasn't even aware that they had added this political sensitive issues label. I had heard some about the kerfluffle with Asmongold, but they sent me this warning and finger wagging, and you know, I was like, wow, that's weird. Like, you probably should have just let us know. Now, what's interesting is I went back in and looked at my dashboard, and I noticed that my ad revenue doing politics on Just Chatting had ended a week before this. So in October, 1 week before this warning, my ad revenue was gone. And it has been gone since October 2024. Okay, now there was no major announcement about this. They did not say, hey, we're adding this political content. There's been these things. We're taking away your ad revenue for X amount of time. No, nothing. Now, here's where I kind of get pissed, because now I no longer have a Twitch rep. So I have to reply through partner services. Okay, you have the partner portal where you can go in and run a Twitch ticket. Now, I have done Twitch partner tickets many, many times before. I've never had an issue with this. There's always been a response. I reached out twice regarding this warning and regarding the silent and non-transparent way that they eliminated our ad revenue twice through the Twitch portal, and no response back. Nothing. Not even to say we're like working on your case. Nothing. Just dead, ghosted. Okay? Now, because I have Dan Clancy's phone number and email, I decided to reach out to him. And so I did reach out to him a couple of weeks later. I waited for a couple of weeks for partner services. And then I reached out to him saying, hey man, some shit's going down. I got this weird notification. Nobody told me. I got a warning. My ad revenue disappeared a week before. What's going on? And he says, send your number. We'll try to call tomorrow. When are you streaming tomorrow? That was on November 18th. Needless to say, I responded. He didn't call. I emailed him several more times. And eventually, about a month later, I actually got this response, okay, which was on December 17th. This was a month of going back and forth like pretty much every other day. Like I said, remember that thing I said about persistence? And then eventually he got back to me and said, sorry about not responding. I have been swamped. We're working on getting ads back on channels that are streaming politics. I know this is frustrating, but there's engineering work required to ensure ads don't run against all the campaigns. Certain advertisers don't want their content running on politics. So this will change early next year. Blah, 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 blah. Please keep this email between us. The community knows this is happening, but don't want my email spread around. But there's some contention around that because a lot of people at this time were not really aware. And as I told you, partner support was dropping the ball on this one. So now I'm kind of pissed. We are now at this point, we're in many shades of non-transparency and fuckery happening with this site, and where they're just, you know, making things disappear without saying anything about it. And then not even responding to you when you reach out. Okay. Now, what recently happened is we've had no ad revenue, no mention of when it's coming back. In May, I got a notice about a Twitch Connect event, a networking thing, which I thought was kind of like the one before, the 10 people at the table. It said Dan Clancy was going to be there. So I was like, okay. So I signed up for it via their little Google Forms. And I honestly thought they were going to recognize me and not bring me in on this thing. Okay. But I had changed my name from Acting Like Tommy to Political Punk. Nonetheless, I received notification. Yes, you're confirmed for the Twitch Connect Portland event. No plus ones, you know, a drinks and food event. So I go to this event. And when I got there, I realized it wasn't that private sit down like the other one was. This was more like an open networking event that I had gone to way back in 2019 when I first started streaming, where local streamers come. And it wasn't even just partners. There were a lot of affiliates there. It was, you know, small crowd, but whatever, kind of work in the room, talking to people. But I was actually there in a targeted way to talk to Dan Clancy. Dan Clancy shows up. I engage him in conversation. We had a long conversation. It's about 20 minutes. It got a little bit heated because I was really pressing him because he talked about how they were bringing the ad revenue back supposedly within the next month, but they were going to add like political content and then extreme political content. And there was very little clarity on what would define extreme. And me being boisterous and being pretty aggressive, I naturally assume I would probably qualify as the extreme. And so I kept sort of asking him how they're going to define it. And he said, look, advertisers don't want to work on political content. And I'm like, but that's not exactly true because I make YouTube videos where I do like verbatim. I sort of mute the F words just for the algorithmic discoverability, but I don't mute my crazy talking about how I think about protests and any of my outrageous beliefs. Okay, as the comments on YouTube, some people are like, oh, the way you feel about responding to police aggression feels unacceptable or what have you. And YouTube has a very straight and easy to follow content guidance system and, you know, about monetization. And so I was lamenting that, like, why doesn't Twitch have something so clear? And he said, well, we're really small. We don't have the infrastructure, this, that, and the other. But then I asked him to describe what he might consider political content. And one of the descriptions he gave me was like, well, if somebody's on there, they call Donald Trump a fat fuck, and they want to, you know, he mentioned something about them suggesting a bullet be put in his head, which of course is like over the line. It's like calling for direct violence. The way he said it was like pretty aggressive and in your face. And I was like, well, obviously aggressively and in the face saying you're advocating for the killing of a president or you want to kill a president, like, of course, that would be considered extreme. But I've zeroed in on the whole calling Donald Trump a fat fuck. Like if a streamer were to call President Trump a fat fuck, you would demonetize them? And that seemed crazy. And then he brought up this situation of Tectone, like going off on a streamer and being abusive with her, like I believe around weight or something like that. But that was like a one-on-one attacking of a fellow streamer community member. This is like somebody name calling a power figure that uses name calling in, you know, the execution of their power. And so I even like zeroed in, like, do you personally think calling Donald Trump a fat fuck, that's extreme? Like, are you now like a Donald Trump? Are you turning Twitch into a Donald Trump protectionist, you know, social media platform? Like, are you red pilling this shit? Because they have, you know, sort of changed the way they handle bikini streamers. They allowed male streamers like Tectone and Boogie to abuse some of their content guideline changes and do this outrageous stuff that then caused them to change the rules for the women. They brought back 𝗎𝗍 after these crazy tweets about like KKK greater than LGBT. They recently unbanned Aiden Ross, who watched literal pornography with children on Kick. And yes, in the terms of service, off conduct of watching porn with kids should be a permanent ban. Twitch can ban you for off conduct stuff that is really heinous like that. So I was really miffed that some of these right-wing people were being unbanned and given these opportunities when it seemed like protection for LGBTQ people and Twitch's backing of free speech for leftists was really getting impaired. Okay, was really like, there is some shit going on. And I left that conversation with him not really feeling reassured, feeling like, in fact, Twitch is about to go the way of Jeff Bezos and Amazon and about to go the way of being a Trump authoritarian right-wing protectionist machine, where they are going to start considering Donald Trump and the MAGA set as like a protected class. And I was really alarmed by that, okay? I was really bothered by that. That was on June 12th when I went to that event. Now, on June 18th, my emotes got audited and a whole bunch of emotes got removed because political images, okay? Which I get it. You know, there were some Kamala Harris emotes, right? There were emotes of, you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene, JD Vance. Political images, I guess, are disallowed on Twitch. I mean, some of these, this is like, that's a Joker makeup. I mean, I guess it's technically political. That one seems to like toe the line. I tried to make these emotes not about politics, but more outside the realm. But what's weird is I have had these emotes for over a year, okay? And 6 days after that heated conversation with Dan Clancy, my emotes are getting audited, okay? And then my emotes are getting removed. But again, the timing felt a little bit weird, right? I was getting a little bit of the alarm bells. We'll have a conversation with Clancy. It's pretty heated. He didn't like me pressuring him. He didn't like me, you know, saying that, you know, that I thought it was unreasonable that they couldn't create a system that was at least as good as YouTube, that it felt like they're actually trying to silence left-wing creators, trying to be a mouthpiece for this red pilling. And, you know, then my emotes are audited. Then, just the other day, we got the ban. Okay? And so now we're going to go into the ban. I'm going to give you a little heads up of the ban, and then I'm going to play the clip. I may well deserve this ban. You know, the merits are maybe arguable that I actually do deserve this ban. I think it's a little bit questionable. I think the word here, if we look at this Twitch ban here, is about inciting others to burn down a police station. Okay, the incitement. Because if you look at the legal definition of incitement, the way free speech is protected in America, incitement is a tricky one because incitement has to carry with some immediate possibility of execution. Okay? Because otherwise, anybody saying we should do X, Y, or Z could qualify as incitement. But the reality is there needs to be some immediate threat of the thing being carried out. Which means if I am IRL streaming at an ICE detention center and I'm saying to my viewers, get down here, we're going to like mess this building up, we're going to break into this building, we're going to smash out the windows, or I'm there to the crowd saying, let's do this, that's incitement. There's a threat of immediate action with the thing I'm inciting. I'm there encouraging people to get on a bandwagon with me to go and smash the building. Okay, now what you're going to see in this video is you're going to see two things. One is chatter asked about Hassan. Okay, we were talking about Hassan. I was talking about how I respect him, and a chatter asked about the comments Hassan made about 9/11 many years ago, some very controversial comment that Hassan made that were part of a bigger conversation about terrorism and U.S. foreign policy and how the two are related and could be cause and effect. But Hassan made a pretty crazy statement that got him banned for a while and it caused a ruckus, and somebody asked about that. And now you're going to see I choose my words very carefully here because I wasn't going to repeat what Hassan said, and I didn't even really go into it. I just obliquely referenced the item that the chatter had put in the chat. Okay, and in that oblique reference, I'm going to read it to you. They asked if he said this certain thing about 9/11. And I said, he did say that about 9/11, but like, it's not entirely wrong. What he said about 9/11 is not entirely wrong. It didn't happen in a vacuum. America's behavior had a lot to do with that. People wanting to commit that attack on America. And so I guess there is some oblique attachment to the thing. I was speaking about that greater discussion that Hassan was having about American foreign policy and how it impacts like attacks against America, or how countries do that, how there is a push and pull between they don't like your foreign policy, they might attack you. Now, I certainly didn't repeat what Hassan said. I didn't say anything there, as you'll see, about the individuals. I didn't even name the individuals. I did say 9/11, right? But my actual vocalization around that was all very oblique and basically just saying that America's foreign policy does sometimes make people want to do things. Okay, it engenders like resentment for it. And now this came, as you're going to see in the clip, there was more to this conversation where I was talking about one of the things that people don't like about Hassan is he can look at a bad event that happens and sort of look at the side of the people who did the bad thing and try to figure out why they wanted to do that. And I do that as well. And that starts my conversation about policing. Now, in this, I am very clear in the clip to say, you know what? You should not harm people. And at a protest, you don't want to harm people. But I did go on to say that at a protest, when the police aggress unprovoked on protesters, firing rubber bullets, flashbangs, tear gas, that in my opinion, it's okay for the protesters to strike back by causing property damage. That I didn't feel like property damage was violence. I felt like in the case of oppressors like the police aggressing and committing violence on protesters, that I thought it was perfectly okay for their rebellion to smash windows or burn down a police station or harm the property, and understanding that that is sometimes what people do to vent that aggression, because you can't strike back at the cops and you don't want to hurt any private businesses or hurt people. But that I thought that that was an acceptable type of protest response in fighting oppression. That in fact, sometimes if you are being oppressed, like you may have to fight back the oppression with that type of property damage. And I, brought up the Boston Tea Party and said it's kind of hardwired in our American DNA. Now, the incitement problem here is, yes, I'm talking about in the first person, we should smash windows. But the thing is everybody watching me is at their home. I am at my home. There is no active protest. There is no immediate threat of any of my viewers hearing my words, making up this mythical situation where the police aggress. And I say that at that point, they've been violently attacked by the police, that I think it's okay for them to smash the windows and burn the police station down. There's no actual incitement. There was no call to actual extreme violence. I admit it's a controversial opinion to think that. I admit that it is, maybe controversial to put that opinion out there so directly, but I don't engage in this behavior. I did go to the Portland BLM protest. I saw, a wrecked building. I locked arms with the Wall of Moms with my family, with my kid and my girlfriend. And so I've had some connection to protests, but I've never engaged in property, destruction. And I've never advocated in a situation where there was an immediate threat to do it. Okay, never. And then I went on to talk about the Rodney King thing, where some really crazy violence happened after Rodney King. I was living in LA at the time. And I talked a little bit, as you'll see in the clip, about how I saw that stuff go on. And a lot of racism crept up after that, where people judged races. If one race acted out and did something, they wanted to judge everybody as that. And I, as you'll see, I said, I didn't really buy into that I kind of as horrific as the tragedy was, I really kind of understood the oppression from the LAPD and just life in LA, redlining and the way they crush neighborhoods, how that type of stuff breaks out. But anyway, I woke up several days later and I got banned. And I don't know if this extra interest in my channel is from a banned chatter or if it is from my heated discussion with the CEO. But as you can see, there's a pattern of weird behavior with ad revenue, money disappearing, no transparency from Twitch. I speak up about it. I lose my Twitch rep. My channel starts getting investigated. And I don't know. I don't know if that is cause for alarm. I don't know where we go from here. But that being said, I'm going to go ahead and play the whole clip so you can see the context of the entire clip that supposedly got me banned on Twitch. And here we go. Dude, Hassan, what's funny, Finalize, is here's the deal. As far as political people go, they fucking, nobody's perfect. Whether a politician, dude, fairy godmother, let's go. Thank you for the tier 1. No politician is perfect. No people are perfect. We're flawed. We're rambunctious. We're not passionate enough. We're too passionate. We're whatever. You know what I'm saying? They're so like none of us can make everybody happy, right? You know, you're like so right about that. But the thing that I will give Hassan, because like for me, like Hassan tends to focus, his primary subjects that he focuses on are not necessarily the most important things to me, right? And the things that I focus on are probably not seen as the most important things to him, right? But the thing about Hassan, whether you love him or hate him or not, he's authentic. Okay, he is not. I believe he believes passionately about the things he says, right? And does he say things in a sometimes aggressive and fucking, you know, like in your face kind of way? Sure, but so do I. Sometimes that's just your personality. But I've also seen him like argue soft-spokenly with incredible reason. And he's very intelligent. You know what I'm saying? And you know what I mean? So I respect the hell out of him. I do. I respect the hell out of him because he's fucking real. You could tell that he's real. And, you know, and he's smart. Okay? He's not like Asmongold, who has some giant opinion on everything, but it looks like the guy has never fucking studied anything. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, and Hassan is like, he's smart and he's always learning. You know what I mean? And like, I know some people like, see, the thing about Hassan, here's the thing about Hassan that I think a lot of people, a lot of like moderate society Hassan gets under their skin in the same way that I do. And here's why. Because Hassan can look at like a terrorist act and he can parse out the reason why the terrorists did the thing, and he could see what would provoke them to engage in that type of behavior. Like, I do the same thing. I can look at a criminal who committed a crime, and I can kind of understand. Like, you know what I'm saying? He did say that about 9/11, but like, that's not entirely wrong. What he said about 9/11 is not entirely wrong. It didn't happen in a vacuum. America's behavior had a lot to do with the people wanting to commit that fucking attack on America. Okay? And you know what I mean? I mean, you know, it's like, and so, but like, you got to understand that, like, you know, he has seen the effects of American intervention over there. It's very personal to him because he's from Turkey. He's from a part of the country where they ache with the pain of America's fucking shit. You know what I'm saying? And like, but that's the thing though that people get irritated about because he can see the other side and relate to it, you know? I mean, it's hard. It's hard. Like anybody who holds America responsible for her moral failings gets a lot of flack, right? You know, I mean, I don't know. I guess I relate to it because I don't relate to some of that stuff because I'm not Muslim and I've only known a very small number of Muslims, right? You know what I'm saying? But my thing is that like, I am, you know, I get people mad at me in my YouTube comments for saying that if the police oppress us, it's okay for us to burn their precinct to the ground. Don't hurt anybody, but it's okay to damage property in response to police aggression because the police have so much power over us. We can't vent that. We can't fight back at them by hurting them, and we don't want to hurt innocent people, so you burn their buildings or smash their fucking windows out. And that's a perfectly acceptable way to respond to police oppression if they're attacking you. You don't do it on the outset, but if they attack you for no reason, then yes, you can smash their fucking building. And people get mad when you say that, right? But like, dude, America was founded on that, okay? When they didn't want to fucking be taxed and when they felt like the king was taking advantage of the colonies, they threw their shit in the fucking drink. You know what I mean? That's what we do here. Okay. And that is like property damage is not violence when it's done in response to oppression. It's, payback. And sometimes you have to pay back oppression if you want to end oppression. If you simply take oppression and allow them to do it without fighting back, you're never going to end it. You know what I mean? And, so, yeah. I mean, it's like, yeah, like sometimes you got to do that shit. And yes, Tar Heel, we paid for it. You're right. We did. That's our building, right? That's our fucking building, And so like but people, when you say shit like that, people get mad at you. They do. They get mad at you. I used to get that shit in the 90s, during the Rodney King era, because a lot of bad shit went down during Rodney King. And I was pretty vocal about it. I was a musician at the time, but I was pretty vocal about like understanding why that bad shit went down. And so I didn't like hold that bad shit against, races or groups of people, because I just understood it. Like I understood the acting out, and it's tragic, when you have that shit. You know what I'm saying? Where's my old punk music? I never made punk music, Finalized, right? I never made punk, really. So there you go. I recognize that some of that stuff may be towing the line. I did dig into Twitch TOS, and they do use the term inciting. That is a term they throw around. They use encouraging with the physically assault, but as you can clearly see, I did not encourage any physical assault. I, in fact, encouraged no physical assault of any kind, even against the police. And I did not at all explicitly state that anybody should be killed. I didn't talk about killing anywhere in there. And I did talk about my own moral beliefs around police striking out with unprovoked violence on protesters and protesters committing property damage as a means of that, fighting that aggression, that I've always felt like that is allowable and in line with the American Boston Tea Party sort of ethos. But again, there was no threat of imminent harm. Like the legal definition of incitement was not fulfilled in any way. And I don't even think from that clip, even as risque as you might think that attitude is, I was talking about it in the first person in sort of a rant, but I don't think there was anything there where it looked like I was telling people, no, you need to get out there now. And this is what you need to do. This is like, get out there, get and do it, right? I mean, I had set up a mythical situation that I was like passionately like, if this mythical situation happens, this should go on. But I think this ban is bullshit. 30 days is a long ban. Now, I should say I have been banned on 3 previous occasions. I was banned once for doing an E-date where an adult film star that was fully clothed twerked on my stream. This was before twerking was allowed. I got banned. That one got, my Twitch rep and I set up an appeal. That one got overturned a day later. Then I got banned for playing a movie I made that had some suggestive, no nudity or anything like that, but some suggestive, like contact that was sexually suggestive. I got banned for watching that during an IRL stream. I thought it was okay because there wasn't any skin, but that one was totally deserved. But the guidelines clearly say you can't even be remotely sexually suggestive with actual physical bodies. And then I did get banned once for watching a Trump town hall with Caitlin Collins on CNN, streaming that, which was pretty surprising because nobody got warned and people were streaming it on YouTube. But I did get banned for that. So I have had a couple bans. The first one the suspension got lifted early. The other 2 did not, which was pretty wild, even though, like at that point, they came a little bit later after I'd already been voicing up stuff about the ad revenue and things. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say. But anyway, take this video for what you will. I am concerned about Twitch. I am going to move to YouTube. It may be a permanent thing, but I am concerned about where Twitch stands. I know we're watching like Harvard and people standing up and fighting Trump. I can tell you right now, I don't think Twitch, the subsidiary of Amazon and Bezos. I don't think they are going to protect leftist free speech at all. I think they are going to become a wing of monitoring Trump speech. And if they don't like you, and if you don't have the right message, I think they are going to come for you and they're going to try and get you off the platform. That's my personal feeling. Whether that happens, we'll see, but be on the lookout for it. And if any of you else have experienced, you know, Twitch taking away your money in subtle ways like that, where it looks like they're breaking their terms of service, you can talk about it, vent it here. I'm going to go and get my shit ready for YouTube. I'm going to be streaming on YouTube from here on out for the time being and maybe permanently, and keep up the good fight, man. I just think it's pretty important to look at this in the context of things that are going down with like Zoran winning in New York City, and already you have sitting Congress people trying to get him denaturalized because socialism or because he's a Muslim. Something is going on in this country and I am not all right with it. And we are going to keep fighting it. And thank you guys. I will see you soon. What is up, guys? Thank you so much for watching. You like the video, you want to support independent resistance media, you know what to do. Drop that sub, hit the like button, and please share it. And we do love our members, so if you want to become a member, it's another really great way to support. Thanks again for everything, guys. I'll see you next time. Let's go.